Hello everyone, welcome to my IELTS Tutor. In today's lesson we're going to talk about the speaking portion of the test. Many students have questions regarding it and wonder whether it's difficult or not. In this video, I'm going to dispel all the misconceptions about IELTS speaking and give you a number of tips that can help you do well in the IELTS speaking module. Now, there are a lot of questions about the format and length of the test, so let's talk about those. IELTS speaking test. Speaking test is the same for both academic and general students. So whether you're taking academic or general, you're going to get the same test, same type of questions, same format. It's always a face-to-face interview with the person, with the interviewer serving as the scorer. The session will be recorded, and this is important because at the end you can review some of your answers. The total time is 11 to 15 minutes. And it's generally held on a different day than the other modules. Now the format of the IELTS speaking test, as you can see, there are three parts. The first part is informal interview questions. It starts off with 4 questions. For greeting, they ask about your name, where you live, and also check your identification. This is followed by 6 to 7 questions, which ask about, say, your hobbies, your work, or your studies, or other general topics. That portion lasts 4 to 5 minutes. Part 2 is the cue card. The cue card is based on a particular topic, usually on your experience, and you're given 1 minute to prepare and up to 2 minutes to speak. So this lasts for maybe 2.5 to 3 minutes. Part 3, you have follow-up questions. These are a series of 6 to 7 questions based on the topic of the cue card. And you have this lasts for about 2 to 3 minutes. After that, you have a discussion with the interviewer. And the interviewer will give you your score. The interviewer will also talk about some of the problems you may have had, and you can also ask questions. And I suggest you do ask questions at the end. Now scoring, there are 4 criteria that are considered, and each carries 25% total marks. These include fluency and coherence, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Now, under fluency and coherence, scores are looking at your ability to do the following: speaking at length, speaking without pauses, able to be understood, speaking without correcting yourself, and use of linking devices. So when we talk about speaking at length, this means that you can talk for a considerably long time on a particular topic. This is important for the cue card since you have up to 2 minutes to speak. Speaking without pauses means that you can speak without long pauses. Now most times pauses are natural because they reflect the rhythm of speech. But for many where English is their second language, they may have unnatural pauses. This is where they may stop and pause for a long time, usually longer than 1 second. For example, I and my friend went to the park yesterday and we got together with other friends, and we played cricket. Now, there were 3 long pauses there. That's not natural at all. So we want to avoid that. Such pauses can mean that you're searching for words, you're not sure what to say, and so it's not natural speech. Ability to be understood refers to your ideas. The scorers are wondering whether your ideas are clear. Can they be understood? And are they well thought out? So they want to know whether or not you're able to use specific ideas, specific details, rather than relying on general ideas, general details that you can go into in depth into a topic, especially the cue card and some of the follow-ups. You need to be more specific. Focus on being very specific in idea, specific in detail. And remember, the more specific you are, the easier it is to be understood, and the more things you have to talk about. Finally, the scorers look at your use of linking devices. These are words and phrases that connect your ideas to other ideas and details. These are important to include in your vocabulary because they help others understand you better. Now, some of these words and phrases include, for example, in conclusion or in addition to. I strongly urge you to research these words and phrases and include them in your vocabulary. The next area, the scorers' vocabulary. Scorers are looking at your ability to use simple common words to more advanced vocabulary, effectively and correctly. So if you're lacking in vocabulary, now is the time to build up. They're also looking at your ability to paraphrase. This is the ability to put someone else's idea into your own words. This is important because you don't want to repeat the questions, which is a common mistake. They also look at your ability to use collocations, which are pairings of words to create meaningful phrases. For instance, common locations include have breakfast or do homework. Finally, they consider how accurate your words are. You want to be able to use words correctly and accurately. For example, if I were to say, we trekked to the store, that's really incorrect because trek refers to hiking in the wilderness. Okay? Rather, I should say, we walked to the store. Finally, grammar is the last criteria that they consider. Here, scorers consider how well you have mastered grammar. They consider how well you construct sentences and your ability to use a wide range of sentence structures, from simple, basic sentences to complex sentences. And the more variety you have in sentence structure, the higher score you're going to have. They also consider your ability to use tenses that refer to time correctly as well. So you should be able to master the various grammatical tenses that involve past, present, and future. Finally, they look at your ability to avoid errors, such as incorrect preposition use, incorrect pronoun use. For example, referring to a girl as him, as well as other common errors. Now, as I mentioned, there are a number of common mistakes people make when taking their IELTS exam. It's very easy to make a mistake, but the point is to focus. When you focus, you're least likely to make mistakes, or you make fewer mistakes. So focusing is key here. Below are the most common mistakes students make. Let's take a closer look at these. The first group I refer to as speaking mistakes. And the reason why I do so is that these mistakes occur when you're speaking. And they can be easily controlled. And they can easily be controlled through practice. So the first one is responding to a question with silence. This means that you simply don't speak when the scorer asks you a question. And there's two potential reasons for this. You either do not understand the question or you're not sure what to say. This is very common for many beginners in English. However, you want to speak as quickly as possible. Now, you're allowed about 5 seconds to start. So use that time to focus on what you will talk about. But also at the same time, pay attention and make sure you understand the question. A lot of times, silence is due to this alone. Finally, use a short introductory sentence. For example, let's say the question is, what steps should people in governments take to prevent? You could start by saying, that's a very important issue. Next, we have the problem of speaking in a flat monotone of voice. And so when you speak in a flat monotone of voice like I'm doing now, it doesn't sound natural. And so the scores are looking for your ability to sound natural. Now, to improve this, listen to native speakers and try to copy what they say and how they say it. At the same time, record yourself and then compare your speaking to how the native speakers are saying. And I suggest you practice this daily. Doing this will help you sound more naturally. Another thing that you don't want to do is speaking too fast. Because when you speak too fast, people can't really understand you because you're speaking too fast and you make a lot of mistakes, especially with pronunciation. So you just heard me speak fast. Obviously, I couldn't keep control. I didn't understand a lot of what I was saying either. So you don't want to speak too fast. On the same note, you don't want to speak too slow. Okay? Speaking too fast, speaking too slow is not natural. And you can improve on this, again, by copying the speech of native speakers. Another problem is speaking at the right volume. Sometimes students speak a bit louder than normal, or they may speak a bit soft. So, you don't want to speak too loud, you don't want to speak too soft. You want to speak in your normal conversational tone of voice. Again, copying native speakers will help you with this. The next set of problems deal with problems of language. Now, this is, we're talking primarily grammar and vocabulary here. Now, since IELTS is a test of English fluency, speaking in your native language is not something you should do. It might be okay to use terms in your responses. For instance, I live here in India, so especially in Punjab, in the state of Punjab, and there are certain traditional dresses or costumes that people wear. So, for instance, Punjabi women here wear a traditional suit called a salwar kameez. So if I'm talking about clothing, I could say, women here in Punjab wear a salwar kameez, which is a traditional suit for women. It involves a long tunic and loose baggy pants. It's okay to use terms, but briefly explain what those terms are. You also want to avoid slang and phrases that are used only in your country. For instance, I live in India, and there are many expressions in English which are used nowhere else. And so a person such as me, or maybe even the score, because the score could be someone from a different country, they may not understand what you mean. So, for instance, if you say passing out, you may be referring to graduating your secondary school or your university. But for native speakers, passing out means that you fainted. You could also say, you might also say you're mugging for a test, which means that you're up all night before the test studying. For native speakers, mugging basically means armed robbery. Someone comes up, hits you over the head, and robs you of your purse or wallet. So you want to avoid words and phrases that are used nowhere else, that are only used in your country or your locality, because they're not correct English. They're considered informal. And even though the speaking portion of the test is informal, you don't want to use slang, you don't want to use these particular phrases. So to improve on this, work on your vocabulary. Find words that exactly say what you want to say in English. So example, rather than say passing out, I graduated. You don't want to rely on simple or common words. This happens with a lot of students who are middle of the road speakers. They can use English pretty well, but they generally rely on common words and simple words for the most part. They lack an advanced vocabulary. They may have mastered some words, but they haven't mastered enough. So the scorers are looking at your ability to use advanced vocabulary, advanced words. And so you want to work on these. So for instance, if I were to say every, and then they're also looking at you're using these words. So for example, everyone in the room is wearing separate shoes. This is incorrect. I really should say different shoes instead of separate. You also want to avoid repeating the question or parts of the question. You're being scored on your ability to paraphrase, and so you should put the question into your own words. For example, let's take the question, why do more and more people live in the city? You could say, I think there are several reasons why people are migrating to urban areas. By doing this, you're showing a certain level of ability of advanced vocabulary. For instance, migrating, urban areas. Those are generally advanced words and advanced terms. So one way to improve on this is that you can practice rewriting sentences that you've come across and put them into your own words. Also study synonyms of the vocabulary you learn. This will help you greatly avoiding this error. On the same note, you don't want to ask to have the question repeated. This shows the interviewer that you may not understand the question. So again, work on building your vocabulary can help. Finally, you want to avoid mistakes in grammar. These can include incorrect tenses, preposition use, and pronoun use. For example, a preposition error would be, my parents are angry on me. It actually should be, my parents are angry at me. My sister just bought a new phone and he is very happy with it. I should say she is very happy with it. So to get better at this, there are many resources from books to websites to help you improve in grammar. For improving both grammar and vocabulary, you should spend some time every day working on your problem areas, working on building vocabulary. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but set some time aside and do this. In time, you'll be using English like a native speaker. So, now, using the tips outlined in this lesson, you can avoid many common errors in IELTS speaking. The key is to practice and work on your problem areas like grammar and vocabulary, and in time, you will crack the IELTS.